The following was recorded in front of a live studio audience at the Studio 21 Podcast Café. This is the United Podcast Network.
Hello, and welcome to the third episode of The Young American. I'm your host, Joseph Bemister. We are live from the Studio 21 Podcast Café. Find us on iHeartRadio, Podbean, the United Podcast Network, and YouTube Live. This podcast is fully fact-based about politics, also opinionated about how our government, officials, laws is changing in a direction of good and bad. Through libertarian views and my guests, whether being left or right, today I'd like to introduce Mark Fournier. He's a 20-year Navy vet. Mark, what did you do in the Navy for those 20 years?
Well, for 20 years, I spent my career as a submarine sailor. I was a communications electronics technician, and I just retired May of 2016. My responsibilities were mostly to ensure secure communications on and off the submarine. I was responsible for safeguarding the cryptographic stuff that we use to encrypt our circuits to maintain secure communications. And, you know, as I rose up in rank, I became the division officer for the navigation operations department. So I was kind of overall responsible for the training and stuff about the whole navigation operations department. So that included operations planning, navigation, and the communications and security aspect of the submarine.
So you had a pretty important job there.
Thank you for your service, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it was cool. It was a challenging, rewarding career, and some days I miss it, some days I don't. Yeah. It's hard to believe 2 years has gone by already.
So with that job being so important, what do you think the Clintons and what's going on with Trump and the so-called intel leaks, what is your take on that?
Well, it frustrates the heck out of me, I'll tell you. You know, for 20 years, for about 12 of that, you know, when I got into being the cryptographic and security manager, that was a big part of my day, and my job was safeguarding this nation's secrets. And it was very tedious. I mean, everything we did was two-person integrity. You needed two people to open safes. You needed two people to sign into rooms. We took great care of maintaining that security on this stuff, you know, including to the point of, you know, each level of security and classification in the government has its own requirements for security. And, you know, one of the things we took great pride in is maintaining them systems isolated and safe from being hacked and being intruded into. And so when you see the carelessness that was taken, you know, by then Secretary Clinton in just a total disregard for the systems and safeguards in place, kind of a slap in the face of someone like me who did it professionally and understands and knew, you know, what the requirements are. So I'm not a big fan of that, needless to say. And I think, you know, I think justice is coming. It sounds like our Justice Department now is on board with seeking some justice to get her to, you know, pay for her crimes and those affiliated with that to help make the decisions to do that.
Yeah. Back onto that, with them and the administration, being Obama's administration, when that whole investigation was going down and you saw no crimes, no punishment at all, what they decided, what was your take on that as well? It's the same thing?
Well, yeah, I mean, you saw, you know, I mean, it's come out now that, you know, basically the exoneration was given before the investigation and the interviews even took place. And so it was really a farce of an investigation. You know, having been an investigative officer as well, you know, one of the roles you have as a senior enlisted in the military is, you know, you're a preliminary investigative officer. So having done investigative stuff before, I know the process of that and the collection of data and the witness statements and all that and how that needs to be done, you know, presented before anything even gets charged, or if there's a crime, you know, you got to do your investigating. And that didn't happen. You know, she got her exoneration before she was even interviewed, and that's frustrating, to say the least.
If a sailor under you was to have his integrity questioned or do what Secretary Clinton did, what would be the punishment for that?
Well, you saw, you know, some of you might be familiar with the case of the submarine sailor who had his cell phone in the engine room of a submarine. So an engine room in a submarine is a classified confidential space because of all the reactor technology and stuff that's back there. And he just took his camera back there to take pictures of him and his shipmates on a deployment, you know, just to capture the moment and stuff, to have memory. Although wrong, he knew he shouldn't have done it. He was prosecuted. I mean, he spent time in jail.
Yeah.
So that's the extent to which they, the military took it seriously enough, and the government at that point took it serious enough to try this guy and put him in jail, and then to see, how they treated the Clinton investigation. It's not cool. There's two different justice systems there, and to me that's not right.
Yeah. And what do you think about Trump with the Russians? People are saying that he colluded with them. He met with them to win the campaign, get a dirt on.
Well, first off,
Yeah.
I'm still trying to find out what the definition of collusion is and if it actually is a law that's broken. Now, there's all kinds of avenues with this thing. Now, I believe, do I believe that Trump sat down and had a handshake and a game plan with X's and O's on how to execute, how to steal an election with Vladimir Putin and the Russians? Absolutely not. That's absolutely ridiculous. Did he attempt to gain dirt on the Clinton campaign as in a presidential election? Maybe, but isn't that what everyone does? I mean, they hire firms, and now we've heard the whole Fusion GPS and these organizations that are out there, and that's what they are political opposition research organizations that are designed to do that. So, again, without the definition of collusion. And is that a law that's broken, right? Where is that? What's the U.S. statute that there is a crime committed there? I think it's it's becoming a big waste of time. It sounds like they've done their due justice. I mean, there are some things outlying that they're investigating, and we'll see how that all flushes out. But really, none of them, if you really read into this thing and do your research, are even tied or committed to, collusion. It's all right now perjury charges of getting caught up in some questioning throughout the investigative process, and then money laundering that happened decades ago. So still a lot more to be seen, I think, before I'm ready to say that there was collusion.
Yeah. So with the collusion and the Russians going on, when Obama was caught spying on Trump, nothing. I don't believe there's an investigation going on to that right now, but essentially he did the same thing for Clinton, except it was interior. It wasn't from the Russians. Clinton tried to get dirt on Trump, but she went through Obama, and he used our intelligence. He used United States intelligence, what's a huge offense.
Yeah, scary. I mean, I know what the capabilities are, the U.S. intelligence capability, and to unleash it on a political candidate is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
I think there is investigating going on. I mean, they're looking at the FISA court and the abuse that they withheld some information and trying to get them warrants, and they really did some shady stuff and setting all that up and getting permission to spy on Trump and his candidacy. So there's still some more to become there as well, and I'm glad that they're finally taking a look at it and taking it seriously. But that's the frustrating part, is the evidence that I pay attention to and I've seen. There's more evidence that occurred, where there was Hillary and her campaign went to try to find dirt on Trump, and they paid this guy who went to the Russians to help get dirt. So, if there's a collusion that occurred there, it seems to me, what I've seen to date is that it seems more like that than any Trump there or, trying to tie some of Trump's business dealings and into helping him win the election,
Yeah.
which I've seen nothing specific on.
I believe they used the Patriot Act as an excuse to spy on Trump. Again, my view on the Patriot Act is I think that's extremely unconstitutional, to spy on your own people without any warrant, just to double check to make sure they're not terrorists or they're planning anything against the United States, the government itself, and the infrastructure. I don't believe that should be used. The Patriot Act's a good concept. Okay, we need to find the people who are, domestic terrorists within the United States, and what's going on around and inside the U.S. People are trying to commit crimes, and I don't think it's very constitutional that they had the Patriot Act. They use that as an excuse. Yeah,
there was a lot. I remember when the whole Patriot Act thing was coming out post 9/11. There was a lot of people up in arms about it. Am I a big fan of it? No. Do I think it's necessary in today's age? Yes. Do I think that it was taken advantage of in this situation, and has it probably in the past? Yes. So I think you need some oversight. You need better control of it, more accountability. Right? I mean, that seems to be a common word we're lacking in today's government, is some accountability, right? We've already mentioned a few cases of it here with Hillary and her email scandal, but I think you definitely need some more accountability and oversight when you do use it, and everything that when it's given permission to should be tracked and recorded, and To go back to the aspect of just us carrying around this top secret information that we used to carry around, and the measures we had in place with 2 people, logging into a safe with 2 people, logging out of a safe, all the controls were in total destruction of that stuff. Everything was logged, so you could recreate something that would occur. You need to have that same kind of, and I'm sure when the law was written, it probably was, but has anyone been held accountable and not taking the measures in place? Probably not.
No, to see something like that, unless, bear with me, everybody, I got a cold. Everybody within the government, they have friends. So if they do something bad, they're 9 times out of 10, they're either going to get away with it or they're going to get some lesser sentence. And I think that's what happened with Clinton and what's going to happen with Obama and the new Attorney General. Although I do like some things about him, I mainly dislike him, but I do think in this instance that he's doing the right thing. I believe the right, being a libertarian sitting in the middle, the right is a little bit more about the people inside the U.S., about justice, about, okay, we're not as corrupt, we don't care about people outside, we don't care about us, ourselves. If you did something wrong, you did something wrong. And I think that's how it should be, but sadly I think the left is a little less, okay, if you got friends, we're going to help you out here.
I would agree with that.
And looking at both sides, Jeff Sessions, I think he's doing a pretty good job with this whole investigation of the Clintons now.
Yeah.
I haven't heard anything about Obama's investigation besides they're going to look into it, but I don't think it's an official investigation.
I've seen and heard on Twitter and through different things that there's a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff that really they haven't announced yet, but they're looking at a lot of things that occurred during the campaign last year that are still to come. So let's hope justice prevails and there's accountability there, because I think our government institutions now, even if politics aside, they're trying to discredit this organization or that organization, the American public needs to see accountability occur, and that's the only way you keep these laws and these institutions in place and sound is when people are held accountable when they step out of line. And then you saw that with McCabe getting fired. That was step one. He did some things that he shouldn't have done in his position, and accountability got him, and he lost his job.
I saw on the news that Trey Growley, he said, okay, listen, they fired him for a good reason. And then he also came out, I don't know if it was just the manipulating of words. He also said, okay, he only got fired because he was a key witness. And also that came from the man who got fired himself.
Yeah, I know a lot of people try to accuse President Trump of politicizing, and using it to say, look, here, he did some wrong and setting me up and putting the setup on, and that's why he got fired. But, it wasn't even there was a recommendation to President Trump from an internal investigation that determined this guy had done some stuff that was against regulations. Again, accountability, no matter who you are, friends with the Clintons.
Oh, yeah.
The third man high in the FBI, you need to be held accountable if you break the law. Yeah. Period.
Politicians throughout history of breaking the law, and a lot of them gotten away with it, but a good amount of them also been prosecuted. Nixon basically did what Trump did. He got caught for it, or not Trump, Obama did. Got caught for it, and then look at him now. He got impeached. Although he was he able to finish out that term?
Yeah.
He was able to finish his term, but he couldn't run for the second one, which was actually what he was doing. He was looking at the campaign. So he kind of shot himself in the foot there. So being in the Navy on base, it's a good question. What was the firearms policy for personal firearms on base?
So most military installations, you can't have privately owned firearms on base. The only people that are allowed to have guns are those watchstanders that are securing the actual base facility itself. And then each unit, each command on that base has certain force protection requirements that they have where they can arm up their security force and have guns. So on military property, you're not allowed to have any privately owned guns. Now, if you live in housing and you want to have a firearm to go hunting, to go bird hunting and whatnot, you could check in your firearms with they usually have an armory there that will check them in and out for you, so you can go get it and then go do your hunting, whatever target practicing, whatever you want to do, and then you go check it back in.
That's pretty cool. So they take care of your firearms for you, essentially, and they make
I don't think they break it down and clean it.
No, they don't do that.
But they do. They will secure it for you.
They make sure everything's all right. It's safe. That it's not going to get in the bad hands. And a lot of people are saying that they think police departments should do that with civilian guns. I don't want to go to the police department every morning if I want to conceal carry a firearm and say, hey, can I have my gun? And then for them to say, today the armor's not in, can't get in there. You know what I mean? And it's kind of a tough decision to make because you log out a gun. You say you're going on a hunting trip. You really don't, and you go. There's holes in that whole process there. A lot of people, I saw that actually on Facebook today.
Yeah, well, I mean, that goes to the law, right? I mean, the laws in this land, they hold law-abiding citizens in check.
Yeah.
Criminals, they want to break the law. They're going to break the law no matter how many laws you got on the books,
exactly.
right? So
they should outlaw murder. Oh, wait, they did.
Yeah, they shouldn't sell drugs anymore because that stops everybody, right? I saw that a meme on Facebook. We should definitely outlaw drugs.
Right. I saw one the other day too that said you should outlaw smoke detectors. Why you need a smoke detector? You got a fire department.
Exactly.
Right. And saying your smoke detector is your initial response. Right. You wakes your family up, gets you out. So that's the thing with checking your firearms in the police station. I mean, if I want to protect my family at home and there's an armed burglar coming in,
we just run to the police
we'll
station.
call 911 and wait the 6 minutes, or 8 minutes. I think it's the fastest I've ever made it from my house down to Pelham Rotary where the police station is. So I don't know how long it would take them to get there, but not as quick as it would me for me to go to my gun cabinet and pull out my firearm.
Yeah, you got a fire extinguisher, and then you have a burglar extinguisher, and I think that burglar extinguisher should be a Benelli with a double-out buck, and
That's excessive.
That's
excessive. I like it.
I don't think that's
excessive.
excessive. Last time you said, I said, I think anybody should be able to own anything the military has. And you were like, oh, even a bazooka? And I was like, I have no problem. You said the same thing.
I would like to say that from our last podcast, I listened.
Oh, look at that.
I'm carrying an extra magazine just because of you, Joey.
Nice. Yeah, you can keep that in a pocket or whatever, but did you go out and buy that, though?
No, I had it. I just wasn't wearing it. But my question is, you had mentioned about having a bandana of some kind or a dressing. Couldn't you use any article of clothing and a pocket knife to create that?
So that's very tricky unless you're medically trained and you know how to use the proper tools the proper way. It's very hard to stuff a wound with a sleeve you cut off your shirt. It's not designed to do that. And for me, it would be a tourniquet, a rat tourniquet or the military tourniquet. Do you remember the term for the military tourniquet? A cat tourniquet? I think it's a rat and a cat tourniquet.
Yeah, I believe that sounds right.
The rat tourniquet essentially is a shoelace. It's like a shoelace with some bungee in it, and it's designed to stop a wound. You could argue you can do that with a shoelace, but inside the rat tourniquet, there's a section you can actually wrap around so it's tighter.
Yeah.
And when you're using something that's not designed for its use, although it might work, it's not gonna work as good as
You're not as protected.
You're not as protected
as you could be.
Yeah, it's like using a bucket of water to put out fire instead of a fire extinguisher. It will work to a certain extent, but it's not going to do the full job.
Well, unless it's an oil fire, in which case you just spread it.
That's true. Yeah, I don't think that's going to work though with anything like the gunshot wound, but it happens. And speaking of firearms, today we actually had a bad incident down in Maryland. There was a school shooting that everybody was reporting on, but the funny thing about that is they're not reporting on the SRO that stopped it, the armed police officer. And I think you said... Yeah, actually,
I spent some time right before we come in just scrolling through different websites from the different news media outlets in the country. And I just wrote down some things here. CNN had 5 different news articles. Let me read them to you. Polygraph report determined Stormy Daniels may be telling the truth about sexual relations with Trump. New York Times, former Playboy model who alleges affair with Trump sues. Third one, defamation case against Trump moves forward. So 3 right there, just attacking President Trump. White House won't say if Putin's re-election was free and fair. And then finally, this is what the headline wrote. Lone resource officers, quick action, stop Maryland school shooter within seconds. And then I went to NBC. They had 6 stories down before they actually even mentioned it. And again, it was just a small little caveat about lone resource, not armed. They just state the fact that resource officers stopped the intruder. I believe that SRO, excuse me, we have an SRO at the high school, and most of the time he's there. Sometimes he isn't. And honestly, if we don't have him at school, there are days when I'm like, oh, where is the SRO? Like, what happens if somebody comes in? I feel a lot safer with him there. And I think having one, sometimes we have 2 when they're visiting at the high school there, I feel a lot safer. And I believe if there was a shooting, I feel confident that our SRO, knowing who he is and his background, a little bit at least of it, that he full confidence he'd be able to stop somebody in that situation. I think it's a great plan, and I think you heard the president mention it and a few others, and they kind of got ridiculed, like, no, we don't have. But I think having veterans like myself, who have served in the schoolhouse serves all kinds of purposes. One, I mean, we're trained in small arms, so we have response training and security training. But not only that, not only would we bring that, I mean, think of the mentorship that's lacking in a lot of young adults' lives today, especially young males. If you could have a former military guy in there, that gives them someone to look up to.
Exactly.
And we're trained in suicide awareness. We're saying in depression awareness. I mean, we have to. This is part of our general military training every year. So, you could see troubled youth and question them and be a role model for them. I think it'd be just a win-win for everyone. And I know, people that have served in the military, a lot of them don't want to stop serving. They'd like to serve in a different capacity. And what a better way.
Police officers, school official, security guards, guidance counselor. I mean, we have some teachers at our school, mainly substitute teachers that are former military. Because the older generation tends to, the older you are, more people are in the military. Our SRO, he was a Marine, and I talked to him as much as I can about the service, talked to him as much as I can about his experience and how he felt about it. And honestly, he's one of the reasons why I'm probably going to join. People like, friends, family, you're one of them. I talked to you about it. I talked to other friends about it. And being libertarian, a lot of people have that false census that we're completely anti-government. We're not complete anti-government. We're patriots, essentially. We're
accountable, responsible government.
Exactly. Accountable, responsible government who doesn't have too much power. Now, do we think taxation is theft? For me, yes, certain taxation is theft. Property tax, income tax, tax me on the things I buy. Okay, I'm buying them. Tax me on purchase, but don't tax me on the things I already own. Because that's when I think it's theft. That's when I cross the line. A lot of people are kind of concerned when I say I want to join the military in the libertarian community. They're like, "What are you doing? You're hopping on in with the government. We're against the government."
Yeah.
I'm personally not fully against the government. I'm personally, pro certain government, pro response government, pro regulated government. And being in the military, I would really like to serve my country and protect the Constitution, the sole piece of paper that I look to every day.
Hey, I will tell you, I have zero regrets. A young kid from Maine who didn't know what I wanted to do, and I kind of fell into it. I think I told you, my buddies had joined the year before and given my name to the recruiter, and I had no intentions of joining. He'd been calling my house, and I'd been avoiding him like the plague, but my mom told him my whole life story. So here I was. I'd been out of college, a few months and not doing anything really, just running with the wrong crowd. And I come home one afternoon, and there's a guy in dress uniform sitting there having coffee with my mom, and I knew right then that it was time to make a move, and I went, and it just opens up so many doors. I think it's a great avenue for any young American to do today. And you just learn the sense of service, the accountability, responsibility, just some of the things that we've already talked about. You learn that, and it's instilled in you, and it's upheld, right? I mean, in the military, people don't get away with taking pictures in the engine room of a submarine. You cross the line, you get held accountable. Yeah. And you learn that, and I think that's a healthy thing.
I do think today's youth, my generation, a lot of them don't have a sense of guidance, don't have a sense of responsibility. They're kind of not troubled, but I think my generation kind of wants to do their own thing. They don't have much structure around them, not because of their parents, just because of the general I'm lost for words right now.
Society. Well, you got a lack of focus in general because of just think about the exposure to video games alone. And
I love Call of Duty, Jonathan. Come on, man.
I'm not saying you shouldn't love it.
Down.
I'm not saying you shouldn't love it, but in addition to that, how quickly you can change from game to game. When I was a kid in the 90s, it was a 10-minute process to swap the games, and now it's almost instant. Think about music and how accessible that is. I'm a retired disc jockey. I would play music at schools, and the kids would want to hear the first 30 seconds of every song. In my generation, we listened to the entire song.
Yep.
We didn't have a choice because it was a tape, and in order to get to the other side of the tape, you had to listen to the whole thing. That was it. So there's a little bit of that Sesame Street type mentality where the scenery for kids today can change so very quickly, and they have complete control over it right on their phone.
Oh, yeah. And
instant gratification.
Correct.
Yeah. No, I ran into that. My last 3 years, I served as a division officer in a training command where we were taking young guys right out of boot camp and training them, getting them ready for the Navy. And I spent, really majority of my time during that job was mentoring young guys who had a problem, still accustomed, even though after 8 weeks of boot camp and everything, they were still learning how to come in line with the military. And that was one of the biggest things. They want to be the senior chief right now. It's like, no, I've done 20 years to get here. Like, you got to do some time, and there's some things you need to learn.
Yeah, they believe they have the leadership skills, and they don't yet.
Well, and the flip side is that they're much more technically savvy. So not to beat up on your generation, Joseph, but because you guys have certainly a lot more exposure to technology.
Yeah.
You have on your phone what my entire block didn't have in the 90s as far as computing power. So there is certainly a benefit to your generation and their exposure to that technology.
Yeah, and we saw that being the training officer, that's one of the things we did too, is bring new trainers on, and the new technology, they do pick it up much faster than, even what I did, 23 years ago now, I guess. It was, you did see that. They definitely had more of a technologically based background, so fundamental things just came to them a lot quicker.
Yeah.
So there is great hope for your generation yet.
It's not all bad.
Yeah, I mean, you've dealt with them in the Navy. You've only been out 2 years, so you've seen a few of my guys, our generation, through.
Yeah. No, and I think what you're doing here, this is awesome too. It just shows that we have independent thinkers out there that are willing to, think on their own and go do their own research and come up with their own opinions and their own principles, which I think is awesome. So congrats to you for that. And
thank you.
I know there's a lot more that are out there, probably the ones that are tuning into this thing.
Not many people are tuning in yet. I hope to get a bigger audience.
That's not true. You were killing it right now.
Yeah.
As far as the numbers go, yeah.
Am I?
Yes, you are.
Oh, sweet. Basically, our generation now. Back to what you were saying about independent thinkers. I think our generation is more independent because we don't like being disciplined. I think that's the main reason. We don't like being disciplined. We don't like being told what to do, and that's why I think our generation is looking our own way. And I think us, when our generation becomes parents, are going to teach our kids. We're going to want to discipline them because we're kind of power hungry. I see generation, we're power hungry, to be honest with you. I mean, I was in a JRTC program out of Salem High, going back and forth to Wyndham to Salem High School. And a lot of the cadets, I really liked them. A lot of them were a little power hungry, and I could see it's the older cadets, they weren't as power hungry. I loved the program. I was only in there for one semester. I decided not to go back because I felt that it wasn't as structured as I wanted it to be. I wanted it to be more than it was, and I expected it to be a little bit more, although it was a great program and it taught me a lot about leadership and communication skills and being a better person, honesty, integrity. Being a cadet in that program really actually kind of formed the way I look at government politics now and people as a whole and my skills with communicating. And one of the reasons why I've gained my confidence to come on the show is because we had to do briefings. You've had to do briefings before, leadership briefings. We've done leadership briefings. I only did a couple, but still, I mean, me in front of a whole room. Jesus, I was like shaking like a leaf up until now. And even my first episode, you see the first episode of the podcast.
You were a little nervous.
I was a little nervous. You could see I was grabbing the paper, my voice a little shaky. Now it's a little shaky because I have a cold. Don't think I'm nervous, but oh man, that program. That was awesome.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's only going to serve you well if you do decide, Joey, to go ahead and enroll in whichever branch. It will serve you well, all the things you mentioned, the accountability, the leadership, the communication skills, all that.
It taught me a lot about being a better person in society now. And I think that through the high school, I think that everybody should be able to do a leadership class. And I think that's exactly what the JROTC program was. It was a leadership class. It was to show how to become a leader. It was how to communicate more, and it really helped. Honestly, all the cadets in that program are awesome people. They've all gained something from it. I mean, seeing myself being able to go in for one semester through that program, people who run it are awesome. I think anybody at any school, if parents happen to come on here who don't know me, are thinking about sending their kid through a program like that, and honestly, it's even for one semester, it's totally worth it. I changed through it. I gained a lot through it, and I honestly think that's what our youth needs today, a little bit more of communications, responsibility, leadership.
Yeah, I mean, if I keep hearing all this free college stuff, there's a big campaign topic, and Bernie Sanders was wishing everyone free college. Now, I wouldn't be opposed to that in exchange for a couple of years of service, be it maybe not. Yeah. Maybe in the Peace Corps, maybe not in the military, maybe not in submarine force, because 2 years is what we take to get you ready to go. But there's something you can do to help and serve, learn all these things we just mentioned. Yeah. So I would be a proponent of that. I would be okay with.
Even the reserves or National Guard. I'm looking at Army Reserves until I get out of college. I wanted to be a medic at the Army Reserves. I love anything military, weapons.
Really? He likes weapons.
That's my passion. That's my passion. To honestly, I've always looked at it as a whole thing of I've kind of guilt myself into wanting to join. It's more of, okay, if I don't go, I'm confident I'm good with a firearm. I'm confident I could probably save somebody's life, and I'm confident I would be able to use and teach other people how to use firearms. And I kind of said, okay, if I don't, who else is going to be put in that position? Somebody who has no idea about it. Honestly, that's not the case, because they look at leadership positions and what you know to get into those positions, but now that's kind of why I wanted to join. I wanted to do something for my country. I wanted to help my fellow Americans out there, and it's pretty good. That's honestly why I wanted to do it. I've guilt myself into it, and I've got that mentality. It's a pretty good mentality to have, I think.
Yeah.
Amen to that.
Absolutely.
Alrighty, I think we'll wrap it up now. Mark, thanks for having you on.
Hey, it was my pleasure.
We'll talk about coming on again.
Yeah, I'd come back again for sure.
All right, this concludes the third episode of The Young American. I am your host, Joseph Bemister. As always, please like and subscribe to this post, or YouTube Live. Share it as much as you can. Next week, we're going to be talking about actually YouTube and how they're demonetizing everybody at the firearms community. How there was an email today by T-Rex Arms. So anybody follows him on Instagram saw his story. YouTube, somebody who worked at YouTube let out a email that said we have bots that are certified celebrities or somebody big in the community who are arguing anti-gun. Also be talking about more the school shooting and why we think these trends are happening. Shooters, more violence in our generation, and also what's going on with Trump and Stormy and all that fun stuff.
The daily beat goes on.
All right. I think that's it.
All right, guys. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The views and opinions expressed by the hosts, guests, or callers of this program do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the Studio 21 Podcast Café, the United Podcast Network, its partners, or affiliates.